Well, welcome to part 24 of our multi-language adventure game. We're doing it in C# today, and we've added a weapon class, we've added an enemy class, and so we've got a bit more interaction. So I'll just run through the game just to show you how it's now operating. Just drop that out of the way. So we've got as before, we can choose whether or not to enable or disable debug. I'll leave it on for the moment. So the first debug is the items created, and if you remember, we had 4 items: the key card, torch, book and key. We've now got a sword which has been added to the items, but you'll notice that this one is of type weapon. So the object here is a weapon object. A toy plastic sword, the dog has chewed a handle. Okay, so we've got that new. Next we get a new one here. We've now got a dictionary of shared enemies, and we've got a rat, a vicious brown rat with angry red eyes, strength 50, health 50, and its drop item is the key. So the key was originally in the corridor that you could just pick up and use to go north to the reception. Now it's inside the rat. So you've got to make a guess as how do we get that out. So press enter to continue. These are our locations as before. The only small changes here is that the item inside the corridor, we've got the key card, and instead of the key, we've now got this sword. So the key is not in any of these locations, it's inside the rat. Also, I've listed if there is an enemy in here, and the only one that has got an enemy is the lift, which has got the rat in it. Next one is back to as normal. I'll flick through this as quickly as I can just to get to the point where we're playing. Doesn't really matter which one we choose. Right, so here's the menu as before. So we've got exactly the same as we had in the previous one, so I won't go through any of those. I'm just going to go east by pressing 5. Now the sword is now inside the corridor, so we've got the key card and the sword. I could examine and take the sword, but I'm not. I'm just going to go east to the lift. And here we're in a dangerous lift with doors that do not close properly. Enemy rat. There we are. It's telling us what next. Number 1 choice, attack the rat, obviously. So let's hit the rat, and it says you attack the rat with my fist, inflicting 10 damage points, which is not terribly helpful. That probably means I'm not going to get very far. What we'll do, I'm going to go west and examine the sword. Plastic sword, okay, that'll do. We'll take that one. So we'll take the sword, which is 4. So we take the sword. Now I'm going to go back east, and we'll see if we can give that rat a good smack. Okay, attack the rat. Now this time it will say we attack the rat with a sword, inflicting 25 damage points. Of course, it may be too late and that we've already lost so much damage that we're not going to make it, but we'll give it a try. We'll attack the rat. Oh, we killed it. The rat is dead and dropped a key. That was lucky. So we examine the key, and the Yale front door key covered in rat vomit. So we'll take the key. It's back in our backpack. Go west. And now we can finally go north, which of course is to the reception and to the exit. Use the key in your inventory. We're now in there, and you're in the end of the adventure. Well done. There are no exits, so we can only either open the inventory or quit. So we'll quit with, of course, the usual important message. Okay, so let's go through all the changes so you can see how that's been brought about. First I want to go to is the enemy class. So this is a class similar to the item and location. You make multiple objects from it, so it's just a normal class. We've got the properties are name, description, health, strength. I've actually put maximum health in, but we're not using it at the moment, and I don't think I included it in the Python and Lua version, so maybe I ought to delete that just to keep it consistent. There's the constructor, so we pass the name, description, strength, health, and drop item. The max health has actually just been set to the current health, so yeah, I'm going to delete that on the next. In fact, let me do, as we're not actually running it, let's delete that now. We don't need it. There we go, gone. Now the only methods we've got inside the enemy is to attack, so this is where the enemy is attacking whatever it's attacking, and it's automatically going to attack the player. And because of the way that the classes are so interactive in C#, I don't have to pass the class to it. I can just automatically use the player class from within here, so the player is going to receive an attack. The enemy itself can also receive attack, and then from the player, and the damage will be dropped accordingly until it's dead. So that's the enemy class, which is nice and easy to deal with. So we'll just save that and shut that off. Now the other class that's new is the weapon. Now here, very small, very simple, and that's because this one inherits from item. So we have the item class, which I will now display, which is relatively simple. We've just got these properties, name, description, craft items, uses, and container. And then in the constructor, we're simply passing those details across. It has no methods. So we've got name, description, craft items, uses, and container. And that's our base class item. Now the weapon inherits item. So that means it will automatically have all of those properties that we saw in item. So we don't need to set those up, but we still need to pass them into constructor. So when we're making a new weapon, we still have to pass the name, the description, the craft items, the uses, and the container. But this time we can add a new one, which is damage, and that's specific to this weapon class. And we are in the base here passing the name, description, craft items, uses, and container. So that's the way this works. So there are some similarities with Python. In the Python you would put super brackets and then pass in the variables to the super class. So that's done in a different way, but same principles here. So this is going into the base class, which is item, and this is the weapon class. So the only thing we need to do that's different is to put the damage in here. So that's how very, very simple way of inheriting from one class to produce a second. Okay, we'll close the weapon class off. The item class I was just using to demonstrate, we'll shut that off. Now the player, there's a couple of things new in here. I've got this player attack function, which returns a string, which is the message. I'll go through all this in debug mode in a moment. So the player has an attack, and it also has a receive attack method. So those are new. Location, the only change there is that on the display location, I've added at the bottom here, if there is an enemy, if the enemy is not equal to empty string, then we're just adding enemy and pointing that out. So that's just to give you a little bit of extra. So we're already going through displaying the location, the exits and all that sort of stuff. This is just putting in whether there's an enemy there. Game, minor changes in the game. If we start at the top here, we've now got the add to enemies has been filled in with a shared enemies add, and add to weapons. But you'll notice in add to weapons we're still using shared.items as we did for the add to items. I just expand that. shared items add in the items and shared items add in weapons. Because the weapon is a subclass of item, that it can easily go into the same dictionary. It can go into the items dictionary as a subclass of item. Check locations. I think the only thing I've added here was, in the debug section, I've reformatted this a little bit and have put in the enemy, if there is an enemy in here, in this line down here. So that's been reformatted a bit to make it look a bit neater. And then of course we've got the create default enemies, which is where we are adding to an enemy, and again there's its own debug section if we needed it. The create default locations has changed slightly in that in the add to locations corridor we did have a key card and a key. We've now got a key card and a sword. And in the final next one, the lift, we've added this at the bottom where we've got an empty list of items in there. We don't need any item to enter the room, but there is this enemy in there. So that has been added to the locations one just to compensate for the fact that we've now got a rat in there, so those new bits in there. Default items is now add to weapons, and again, because this is now a weapon, we're passing the name, description, an empty list of what it's used to make it with, 0 uses, not in any container, and 25 damage points. So you could put that there. I suppose it would have perhaps been helpful if I'd have put, just to remind me there, that the damage is 25. Nice thing about C# is when you get a lot of parameters, you can kind of see what they are by comparing them with what was actually passed to the real. Go up to the add to weapons. There it is. So we've got this int damage here, and that of course is reflected in here, damage 25. So that's that one set up. Load game, we've just got now a create default enemies added in here. We already had the items, we already had the locations, so we're doing the enemies in there. Otherwise that's not changed. Let's just save that. Location we've dealt with, play with the code. Right, program, so some changes here. We've got this new function called fight, which we'll go through in debug mode. Take action has been modified to add to this one at the top, which it will now add an attack to the menu. And play has also been modified so that if the action is fight, then we can call the fight function. Main has been modified in that once play has finished, it's going to set the narrator end message, and ideally we'd like to put the dead message in. So let me just pause for a second while I find the code, and then I'll pop that in. Okay, so here it is in the Python one. If the game state is dead, then we're going to print out the death message. So we'll control copy that. And here we're now going to put Python code into a C# project. That should be interesting. Okay, so let's change that. So if open brackets, bracket there. Now shared, of course, is a capital letter. Game state, I believe, is also a capital letter. Yep. Shared, a capital letter. Game states is also a capital letter. And of course we've got single quotes because that came from Python, so we just change those into double quotes, and it's accepted that. That's fine. So obviously we need to put this in a code block. Okay, we're beginning to tidy it up. Now we've got for each here, so what we'll do is we'll copy that. And of course we want the narrator death message rather than that. So if we put that in there. Death message, there we go. And then we're going to print the message. Let's put that back in. And we can again borrow that. There we go. So we have brought in some Python code and changed it to C#. So that will now print out the, if the game state is dead, it will print out the death message and then there. So that's all ready to step through. So let's go to the point where we are going to pick a fight. I think that would probably be as good as anything. So let's check out take action, attack. Yeah, we'll go here. Right, so if we pick a fight, we can step through from there. So let's hit the start button. I'm going to disable debug mode because we don't really need it at this stage. And we'd have to get through and get it all running as before. Doesn't really matter. Come on, hurry up. Right, so we're just going to go straight east. And again, I'm not going to pick up the sword this time. I'm going to go straight east. And we're going to pick a fight. Attack the rat. There we go. So the choice is, the string choice we have put down was attack rat. So we're going to return fight. If I press F11, choice there, 11. So our action is fight, and the parameter is empty because we're just doing a fight. So we check what we've called here. Examine, take, inventory. Action is fight. Yes, it is. So we're going to call the fight function. So we pass here, which is of course our current location, which we can now find is the dangerous lift with the rat and all the exits and so on here. So the enemy would be the enemy that's inside at the moment, which is of course, we're now getting the full object, the enemy object. So its name is rat. Its drop item is a key. It's got 50 health and 50 strength, and its description, a vicious brown rat with angry red eyes. So we've got that in there. So we're now going to call the player.attack, and then that will return a string, which we're then going to print out using console write line. So we're now going to step into the player object. There we go. So we're into player, and we're going to attack. So the enemy, we're just getting the enemy out of it in string format. Damage. So what we've done is we've set our default use item as fist, damage 10, and the message is you attack the, let me just hover over the message, you attack the rat. So we're now going to check what's in our inventory. Now the inventory is empty, count is 0. So we haven't got anything in there. If we did have something in there, this would check to see in all of the items there whether we had a weapon in there. So by using this little check here, So if the item in the inventory is weapon, is it a weapon class or weapon object, then we can get the damage from it and use that item. But obviously we've only got our fist, so it's not going to go through that. So we'll press F11, and the message is now increased to say you attack the rat with fist, inflicting 10 damage points. And now the enemy, the rat, is going to receive that attack. So we press F11, and we're now in the enemy class up here. And we're going to receive an attack of 10 points. So we press F11. So our health, which was currently 50, is reduced by 10. So the health is now 40. Checking that it's not below, and the enemy has received its attack, and the message is now being returned for us to print out. So there we are. We write that out, and the console now shows you attack the rat with fist, inflicting 10 damage points. We're now going to check whether the enemy health is 0, which it isn't. So we're going to now produce the message equals enemy attack. So we'll press F11. So the enemy is now attacking us. So the message is now saying rat attacks you, inflicting 50 damage. So this is within the enemy class again. So F11, and we're going to now go to the player class where we are now receiving 50 damage. So our health is currently 104. So it's going to drop by 50. So we now got a health of 54. And we've received our attack. We're returning the message. And now we're going to console right line the message out. So if the enemy was dead, the message would have been the rat is dead, and it's dropped an item. But as the enemy is not dead, the message is instead what it's just done to us. So which is, if we put the mouse over it, the rat attacks you, inflicting 50 damage. So we'll put that out onto the console. The rat attacks you, inflicting 50 damage. Checking our own health. No, we're not dead yet. So we'll move on, and the fight is finished. So we sleep for 4 seconds. There we are, and we're back to the play function as before. So what we'll do, we'll continue with that. We need to just press the continue button, of course. Continue, there we go. Oh, I've lost my, where are we? That's better. Okay, so we've now got another chance to attack the rat, but what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to go west, and I'm going to take the sword. Now we're going to go east, and we're going to attack the rat. Just make sure I've got the things set for fight. Yep, that's all ready to go. So we'll attack the rat, and we'll step through to see what it does. So it returns a new string because we're attacking the rat. And we have chosen to fight with no parameters. So we're going to go down to fight down here again. Fight. We're going to get the enemy. And we're going to do the player.attack here. So we'll step into the player class again. So we're now doing an attack. We find the enemy. It says we attack the enemy. Now here's where at the moment the use item is the fist and the damage is 10. We're now going to check the inventory again, and our inventory now has one item in it, which is conveniently a sword. So we'll step through here, and it says if the item, the shared items item, is a sword, is weapon, then this bit will run. If it was any other item, it wouldn't make any difference. So it's only going to pick out whether we've got a sword. So we'll press F11. Sure enough, it is weapon. Now we have to make an intermediate class variable here called weapon. So it's being declared just inside this if statement. It's being used and then it's being discarded. It's slightly irritating we have to do this, but it's just the way the thing works. So we're creating this weapon, and we are making sure that it is of type weapon shared items item. We know it's an item, but we're making certain that it is declared and cast to a weapon, which is perfectly acceptable. It is, after all, a weapon. And now we can look up the damage. So if we press F11 there, the damage should be what we set it at, which is 25. If you don't do this casting and just try and put shared items item dot damage, it comes up with an error because it says that the item doesn't have a damage property, so you have to cast it first in order to read from it. Then it says we use the item, which is the sword. So this is much the same as it was before. So I just wanted to show you that. And this time we should kill the enemy. So let's continue. Oh no, we didn't kill it this time. Anyway, I'm not going to step through this time, but we will. Let's attack it once more. Of course, it's stopped, so I don't want to bother to step through all that again. We'll just press continue. There we go, and the rat is dead and dropped a key. So now we can examine and take the key. So let's give you an idea how we can now interact in our world by going from room to room and picking up and dropping items. And we can now introduce the idea of a weapon, which we can use on an enemy. The enemy can drop an item which we can then pick up and make use of. So we're beginning to make our game a little bit more interactive now. So next time round we're going to be loading in a game or games from a text file, which will make it more interesting. So there are some new routines that we'll be using there, and it means that you're basically using this as a kind of almost as an engine, in that you can supply a game file and your game will be completely different, with different descriptions, different locations, different enemies, different items based on what you pass it. So that should be quite good fun. Also, I want to kind of tidy it up. I'm thinking I like this menu with its neat little box around it. I'm wondering whether to do something with the description of the room, maybe put it in a single box, or anyway, I'm going to have a play around with that and see if we can come up with something that we can just tidy it up, make it look a little bit neater. Okay, so that's next time round.